everyone, my name is Yeoju. You can also call me Liu. Today I'm going to present cognitive styles and abilities impact on learning performance. In this presentation, I'll start talking about backgrounds, methods, results, conclusions, and the limitations of this study. In the background section, I'm going to talk about general question and the hypothesis that the researchers wanted to figure it out. In the methods, I'm going to present participants, materials, procedure, and the domain. When students learn something, they will have different preferences for finding specific formats. Some students would like to have visual information, and other students want to have verbal information. Learning preferences and the materials lead students to enable learning processes and to improve learning performance and the results. But it does not have sufficient evidence to prove the verbalizer-visualizer hypothesis. Due to the high accessibility of computers, it leads people to have a new curiosity to test about the verbalizer-visualizer hypothesis. The goal was the researchers wanted to figure out the relationship between cognitive style, cognitive ability, the representational format of the learning materials, and performance. The researchers also proposed the three sub-questions related to the general question. The first question was, is there a relation between cognitive style and cognitive abilities? The second question was, can cognitive style predict learning performance? The third question was, can cognitive abilities predict learning performance in general and when learning with a specific representational format? The researchers expected to have small or no relationship between cognitive style and cognitive abilities. They believed that there was no strong evidence to predict learning performance based on the person's cognitive style. For the last question, they expected to predict learning performance based on the cognitive abilities in general. Especially for the last question, they believe that verbal ability would be related to learning performance with material. Spatial ability would be related to learning performance when it was with the diagram. But they believe that iconic ability would not be related to learning performance and it would be negatively related to ability and learning outcomes. The researchers recruited 48 students, 40 females and 8 males, who were majoring in psychology or educational science. The experiment was set based on the between subjects, pre-test, post-test design. The participants were randomly assigned their conditions either in visual or verbal formats. The independent variables were the learning materials in verbal or visual formats, and the dependent variables are the relationship between cognitive style and cognitive abilities, relationship between cognitive style and learning outcomes, and the relationship between cognitive abilities and learning outcomes. The learning environment was set by the proof. It has two versions into the proof. One is the visual introduction and another is the verbal introduction. The researchers used visualizer-verbalizer questionnaire, also known as VVQ, to measure the cognitive styles, and used Groninger Intelligently Test 2 and the Object Perspective Taking Test to measure cognitive abilities. The pre-test and post-test were provided to measure the conceptual, intuitive, procedural, and the situational understanding and knowledge. Participants were asked to complete the verbalizer-visualizer questionnaire by two versions of Groninger Intelligently Test 2, perceptual speed, and the reasoning test. They were asked to complete the object perspective taking test, which was limited into 5 minutes. After they complete the tests, they got informed about the learning task and they could work at their own pace. They first had to complete pre-tests for the learning tests, and they were introduced the domains, and they also were introduced how they enter the learning environment. Once they complete the introduction of learning environment, they need to do post-test. The researchers focused on two domains, combinatorics and the probability theory. The combinatorics were used to determine the number of combinations that can be made with a certain set or subset of elements. The probability theory was used to calculate the chance that a certain combinations will be observed empirically. There were no differences between conditions in cognitive abilities or pre-test scores. In the post-test, the participants were assigned into the verbal introduction condition had higher scores. The conceptual, intuitive, and situational knowledge found no differences, but the procedural knowledge found that the verbal introduction performed better than the participants in the visual introduction condition. There was no correlation between cognitive styles and cognitive abilities, but the small correlations found between two cognitive abilities, spatial and object visualizations. There was no correlations between cognitive styles and learning outcomes in the verbal condition, whereas one relation found between verbal cognitive styles and conceptual knowledge in the visual condition. Table 2 shows the correlations between cognitive abilities and learning outcomes. There were some moderate correlations between spatial visualization and spatial knowledge, and between the verbal ability and the situational visualization. Another correlations found that the verbal ability and procedural knowledge were related. Table 3 shows the correlations between cognitive abilities and learning results. It only showed correlations in the verbal introduction condition, not in the visual introduction condition. The spatial visualization had positive relations with the conceptual, procedural, and situational knowledge, and the object visualization had positive relations with the conceptual knowledge. Verbal ability had positive relations with the procedural and situational knowledge. Cognitive styles and learning outcomes were not related. For example, visualizer did not perform better with visual materials. Learning outcomes may be influenced due to a person's cognitive ability and cognitive processing. People who came up with their own learning materials for the format were more effective than people who were asked to choose formats they prefer. The major findings were hard to generalize, since there were too small participants, and the effectiveness was up to the domain and the target population the study focused on. It led have a lack of focusing on other domains and the other target's population to see the beneficial effect.